Leave Canada only with eyes wide open. Do not waste resources on a move you will regret. The swiftest way to rid yourself of a government's predations is to vote with your feet and leave. However, this direct citizen action, as advocated by longtime libertarian Jim Ostrowski, comes at a high price. Especially if you have deep family and economic roots, replacing that life elsewhere will be nigh impossible. Further, there is no oasis to escape to far from socialists. Even if there were, busybodies would descend on the area like bees to honey. Unless you come from the likes of Cuba, Nicaragua, or Venezuela, you are likely to find the same or worse problems anywhere you go, especially if you are unfamiliar with the destination culture. Add immigration paperwork, and you can see why people typically do not bother. The Anglosphere advantage. One fact many Canadians fail to appreciate is that the Anglosphere has led the world for civility and classical liberalism. This particularly applies to laissez-faire economics and property rights. Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States, despite their contemporary challenges, have been relative havens and magnets for immigration. My grandparents, for example, moved from Ireland to Canada in the 1950s to better provide for their family, which grew to 9 children. I was fortunate to grow up in rural New Zealand with the British common law tradition and policing by consent. In 2013, I attended a seminar near Guatemala City, and the readings addressed the rise of the West. The Guatemalans and other Hispanics in attendance did not question the West's preeminent development. Rather, they hoped their countries too could develop along the lines of Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Do not expect to flee Canada and find places with more respect for personal sovereignty. Pockets of the United States are an exception, as are outliers further afield, such as Switzerland, and microstates such as Liechtenstein, but they are few and far between. Regarding financial privacy and low taxation, the aforementioned states and former tax havens, such as Belize and Panama, are struggling to avoid the clutches of large country bullies and cartels such as the OECD and G20. Attempts to create libertarian or free enterprise havens from scratch have at best struggled to replicate Anglosphere standards. Gold Sculpt's Chile, GGC, became a colossal swindle. The Liberland dream continues to be a dream, and Fort Gold opted to cease construction during Chile's COVID-19 lockdowns. A few Honduran Special Development Regions, ZEDs, are active, but only just. This is your warning. Heightened awareness does not rule out expatriation from Canada, but it is sobering. As an expat myself, this chapter is meant to be a reality check, particularly for those with an eye on third world nations or startup communities. After more than a year each in Argentina and Guatemala, and dreams of a new frontier in Honduras, my take-home is to lower your expectations and read beyond the sales pitch. There are plenty of people eager to make a quick buck off expats, be that in real estate, passport services, or advisory. Regarding balanced information, online forums and blogs can be useful, but they suffer from selection bias. Those who write are usually the ones who stayed. Consider that Guatemalan natives were surprised I stayed as long as I did, since gringos arriving and then leaving is a pattern. You are unlikely to read content by the ones who left. A case in point is self-described refugee Mark Vandermas from New Brunswick, where he founded and promoted the Libertarian Free Province Project. He is a vocal expat who moved to Ecuador during the COVID-19 lockdowns. Even if we ignore Ecuador's crime, economic isolation, and third world infrastructure, the cultural barriers are immense, and foreigners are sitting ducks for overpricing. At 96th, Ecuador does not come close to Canada's 10th on the Fraser Institute's ranking of economic freedom. Dreamers run into reality. A friend of mine from Quebec tried and failed in 2015 to get to Liberland, a small patch of land between Croatia and Serbia. Although unclaimed, it is blocked by Croatian officials and remains uninhabited. What Jim Ostrowski realized is that founding a new state requires at least a modicum of planning and military backing and a willingness to use it. Quote, Liberland is an idea that lives on, but only on a Serbian campsite or a Croatian jail cell. Perhaps one day it will evolve into a state that can implement all the small government policies libertarians have advocated since the first government intervention of yesteryear. But for the moment, it remains a dream." Unquote. The dreamers who invested in the GGC endeavor lost their money to at least one con man. That pitiful tale was an ongoing topic for the journalists when I led the Pen and Post in the mid-2010s. Longtime Canadian voluntarist Wendy McElroy was one true believer who, sadly, got taken to the cleaners and then blew the lid off the scandal. Her one consolation was that she was not alone in making her mistake. Quote, "There is some comfort in being fleeced in good company, in being in the company of some of the smartest businessmen in the movement." Unquote. A friend from Saskatchewan went to work on GGC and then sought to build another liberty-minded community in southern Chile, Fort Galt. Gabriel Scheer found a gorgeous, fertile location on the coast near Valdivia, but he ran into endless difficulties. In addition to local ineptitude, corruption, and laziness, he and his colleagues got stolen from and held up at gunpoint on the property. In 2019, there were violent riots across Chile, and then COVID-19 ushered in overreaching insanity. Just getting out of the country, despite overstaying his visa, proved nigh impossible. Building Fort Galt became little more than a pipe dream, and he and his wife and daughter now live in Oklahoma. They lost many years on that project at a precious time of life. When I visited them in 2016, driving over from Argentina to explore Valdivia, I did not need long to see the problems with living deep in Latin America. The Canadian outlook. As noted in the first half of this book, the Canadian economic outlook is bleak. Argentina-style stagnation is in the offing. The Canadian electorate are also more and more at odds with those who purport to lead them. There are many ways to respond to this, and expatriation is only one of them. It delivers a short-term respite, but a long-term challenge. Reflecting on my own experience, after leaving New Zealand when I was 19 and living in half a dozen countries, I've especially missed out on family life. As explained in The Sum of Our Discontent, Why Numbers Make Us Irrational, 2001, by David Boyle, the dearest aspects of life defy quantification, and community is one of them. Choosing a location to live in based on a profile is like choosing a spouse from a dating app. It overlooks countless intangibles. In addition, like online dating, the nomadic life can be an unhealthy escape. In 2013, a travel blogger committed suicide, and Anita Mack's story revealed that she, quote, struggled with private pain that ultimately tore her life apart, unquote, as observed by fellow blogger Brett Love. He emphasized that Mack was similar to many people far from home, and that it is foolhardy to escape without a clear purpose. If the problem is in you and not of your surroundings, it will almost certainly rear its ugly head again. Canada has precious attributes, many valiant people, and admirable civility. I still remember traveling as a boy with my mother and younger brother to British Columbia and Alberta, and marveling at the splendor of the Rockies and the glacial lakes. Many people I admire are back in Canada, including historian Marco Navarro-Genie and my philosopher uncle and godfather, Louis Groark, out in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. The southward departure of noble Canadians saddens me, not necessarily regarding their plight, they are likely finding better prospects in the United States, but regarding the weakened communities left behind. That is one reason why I support decentralization and, ideally, independence for the provinces, see the epilogue. That would invigorate the region we know as Canada with governmental accountability and reverse the incentive to leave. At some point, you have to stop retreating, and there is plenty worth defending and restoring in Canada. Frances Witterson, a former tenured political science professor fired from Mount Royal University for wrongthink, is one lady taking a courageous stand for free speech and open dialogue. She has a video show and a blog, wokeacademy.info. Similarly, the Freedom Convoy in early 2022 showed there is still a pioneer spirit in Canada. Participants sacrificed to defend and reclaim their civil liberties, and the movement proved to be a role model for activism the world over. Seeing the participants touched me and motivated me to write this book, since I saw a population in Canada searching for freedom-oriented solutions. Only you know whether leaving Canada fits you best in the long run. Working that out is a challenging task that compels introspection, planning, and on-the-ground research. If you would like to proceed with expatriation, or at least explore the idea, Chapter 16 offers 2 countries, a U.S. territory, and 2 U.S. states to consider with your eyes wide open. Much of my own life has been a search for what does not exist, a nation that lives within the confines of classical liberalism or libertarianism, While a man can accept the impossibility of that quest, he can still join with others in communities or files, such as Civitas Canada, that offer intellectual kinship and an escape from what often seems like a world of irrationality and deception. He can also find solace in listening to and reading great thinkers who, for centuries, have pointed out that the emperor has no clothes.